The time is exactly 8:40 a.m. Standing by to talk with us is Professor Sipho Seepe. He is an independent political analyst, and he is going to talk to us about the South African media still remaining in the service of white supremacy. He goes on to say that media practitioners are the first to remind all and sundry that robust and fearless media plays a vital role in ensuring that those in power are held accountable. And in his support of media freedom, President Nelson Mandela argued, and I quote, "A critical, independent, and investigative press is a lifeblood of any democracy." A very good morning to you, Professor Sipho Seepe. Always a pleasure talking with you. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me.
So, are we still in the grip of white supremacy? That also then leads us to the question regarding the funders of the different political parties. It's really a two-pronged question.
Yeah, well, certainly. I think we need to always remind ourselves that we come from centuries of racial oppression and bigotry, and that we could not emerge out of that unscathed. And the other thing that we must accept is the role of the media, that the media plays a critical role, but only if that media is independent and it is fearless. And if it does not fall into responding to what you may call vested interest. But this is as far as we can go. And I quote Nelson Mandela also making the same argument, but at the same time reflecting on his own experience as the president in this country. And he pointed out that one thing that was very disappointing is that in the 3.5 years that he was a president of South Africa, the founding president, he found that the opposition parties, which were mainly white at the time, and this media have been vigorous in opposition to all legislative and executive measures that tried to reverse the legacy of apartheid. And effectively, what you are saying is that we were not having a media that he had in mind, the ideal media that is independent, that is fearless, that is not beholden to certain people. So that is it's a reality today. The fact that you have a few black people who have been co-opted into editorial rooms does not mean that they are as very independent. Just like in apartheid, they became more of informers. And today, some of them, when you read what they've written, it could easily have been written by a person without a black experience. So we expect that when journalists report, they would also interpret the stories that they cover based on their own experience. But what they tend to do, just like in academia, they tend to mimic the white reporters, just like black academics tend to mimic anything that happens in Europe. We have not managed to get that level of social confidence where we can speak things as we see them. Now, relating also to your question, it is you see it manifesting itself in terms of black parties, that because of the resources, most of the black parties are supported by people with vested interest. And sadly so, those happen to be white people. So black parties find themselves unable to go as far as they would. And if they try to be as honest to themselves, they are whipped into a line, either through withdrawal of those funds. But this has been a phenomenon. We've seen it also with trade unions, where leaders of former trade unions who were concerned about super exploitation of their own people, once they are co-opted into the boards of those companies, they become junior super exploiters of their own people. And this is what Karl Marx was saying when he says the ruling ideas of in every epoch are the ideas of the ruling class, that those who control the means of material production also control the means of intellectual production. So what Karl Marx was saying, that until you understand that those who pay the piper are the ones who play the tune, will continue to have this ongoing band playing on. And yes, we are still in the grip of white supremacy. But as I say, part of it has to do with black people's lack of social confidence, those who get co-opted into this, but also that they are paid. And should you decide to say you are free from the plantation, then you'll be dealt with. The independent voices get removed and decimated. And that's the reality of South Africa even today.
And the sad reality is that the elections are around the corner. I understand there's upwards of 100 smaller parties, and you just need to see whom they're being funded by to indicate that the media and our political parties are captured as well. Hold that thought. I want to read something to you here, and you can respond to both the comments. During the Truth and Reconciliation Commission process, 127 journalists from the Naspers group apologized for the role they had played in the apartheid years. These journalists included those from Die Beeld, Die Burger, Rapport, and Volksblad, amongst others. The journalists said that although they had not been personally or directly involved in gross human rights abuses, they regarded themselves as morally co-responsible for what happened in the name of apartheid because they helped maintain a system in which these abuses could occur.
Yeah, I
Professor?
think those journalists must be commended because they were acknowledging what we've always said, that apartheid is a system. And what the TRC unfortunately did, what the Truth and Reconciliation Commission decided to do, was to project and reframe apartheid as if it is acts of individuals, as if the people who were guilty of apartheid were the likes of Eugene de Kock, that the focus was on what you call egregious acts of human rights violation. And people were sought, and the whole system was now individualized. But what these journalists were saying is that we, as white people, also benefited from this system. That, as I would always remind, that every white person in this country is a beneficiary of a white racist regime. They are beneficiaries of colonialism. And this is the first truth that we must say. And unfortunately, because we did not deal with that aspect of apartheid as a system, we reframed it as if it was acts of individuals. So the journalist effectively agreed with the whole world that what we're dealing with was not simply what happened to one individual. We're talking about how a particular people of a particular race were beneficiaries, were privileged, when others were systemically disadvantaged. So the journalists are saying we may have not been involved in the gross violation of human rights, but we cannot shy away from the fact that our collusion with the system, by not pointing it out and calling it out, we're in a sense baptizing that system. And it was really about mind control. And you also have black people who were easily co-opted into the system. So when we deal with this, it's not an issue of simply wanting to have revenge or avenge against certain individuals. It's simply to understand that the system that was vile, the system that was considered to be a crime against humanity, was a system that targeted people of color.
Okay, I do know you have a time constraint. I'm going to ask one more question and then let you take leave of the interview. When we look at journalism, when we look at media as a whole, South Africa is not unique regarding the situation where the press is captured. This happens all over the world, does it not? You can look at the US, UK, all the Western countries. It is the people with the money that control the media because they need their agendas to be put out there, their political parties to be in the forefront. So their money talks. It's the way they are able to and will rule the world. And once again, it's an issue of white supremacy. But then what about the Middle East and India, for example, and Africa? We have similar situations playing out there. Is it fair to say it's just a white supremacist issue? Or is it about money talks? Is it about protection of vested interest all around the world?
Well, the issue it has to do with vested interest. It has to do with those who control the resources. And as I say, in my example in South Africa, because the current president represents the interests of white supremacy, you see him defended mainly by the mainstream media. Whenever he has to account, they turn a blind eye to that. Because even though he's black, they understand fully well that he's the best bet for white supremacy. So they, and he has, even not only before he became a president, even when he was in the board of Lonmin, the UK UK-based company that operates in South Africa, it was very clear in Marikana on whose side he was on. So those who have vested interest and have control in terms of resources will always dictate what dance the dancers must respond to. So even if you go to India, you go to any other country, what you need to do is who pays the piper, and
Yeah,
that person will be the one who plays the tune. And so you can move from the national, but at the same time, we also have the global imperialism, where the empire dictates. So even what happens in the Middle East, you'll find that the countries of Europe, you'll find that the US, which is also a superpower, they do dictate what is considered to be egregious acts of violations against human rights. And if those who are perpetrators are sup- supposedly supporting their agenda, they'll turn a blind eye to that. And we've seen it with how the US has taken a position
on
on Israel. We've
Palestine.
seen how
Yeah.
European countries have taken a position on Israel. Part of it is that the agenda that they see Israel to be pursuing is an agenda that speaks also to their own interest.
Absolutely. And that's the reason why, sadly and unfortunately, the other Middle Eastern countries are unable to assist the Palestinians regarding this current genocide, because if they do, the rug's going to be pulled out from under their feet. That's the reality of the dirty world of politics, white supremacy, and power and corruption. We have to leave it there because you have to go. I could talk to you forever, but you
No, no, thank you for inviting me.
lovely to talk with you once again. We will talk again in the future. You go well. Thank you indeed for your time.
Thank you very much.
It is exactly 8:53 news and views on Salam Media, and we'll go for a short break. When we get back, we're going to take a listen and a look to a video regarding the resilience and strength of Palestinian women. We celebrated International Women's Day on Friday, but I think particularly we need to look and commend at the Palestinian women for their resilience and unimaginable strength during this current genocide. Please stay with us.